Today, we're going to break down a military operation that seems like it was pulled straight from a sci-fi movie. This is a story that really peels back the curtain on the new face of warfare, a world where the most important battle is won before a single soldier ever sets foot on enemy soil.
So picture this, right? You've got a high-stakes special forces raid, deep in hostile territory, to grab a high-value target. From the outside, it looks like a flawless, textbook physical operation. But here's the thing. The real story, the part that changes everything, has almost nothing to do with the soldiers on the ground. And that's the big question, isn't it? We're talking about Venezuela, which was protected by one of Russia's most advanced air defense systems, the S-300. This thing is designed to stop exactly this kind of attack. So how in the world did a massive fleet of aircraft just fly right on in, completely untouched? The answer is not what you think.
You see, the real battle wasn't fought with helicopters and commandos. It was fought silently, invisibly, on a battlefield you can't see. And the craziest part? It was already won before the first rotor blade ever crossed the coastline.
And this is the key to the whole thing. The physical raid was just the grand finale, maybe 10% of the actual mission. The other 90% was all about achieving what's called fifth domain supremacy. It's about using code to completely dismantle your enemy's ability to fight back, turning their billion-dollar weapons into, well, expensive paperweights. This is a massive shift in how we even think about war. We're all used to kinetic warfare. It's physical, it's loud, you see the explosions on the news. Cyber warfare, though, is the polar opposite. It's a silent, invisible takeover that happens inside the enemy's own computer systems. It's a ghost in the machine.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How did they actually pull this off? Well, it wasn't just one attack. It was a digital checkmate built on 4 perfectly timed cyber operations that completely paralyzed Venezuela's defenses.
These were the 4 pillars of the operation. Now, each one was a problem on its own, but when you put them all together, they created a state of total paralysis. First up, they turned out the lights.
Yeah, this very cryptic quote from an official points right to the first prong of the attack, a highly sophisticated strike on Venezuela's national power grid. Specifically, they targeted the Guri Dam's control systems, what the pros call a SCADA attack.
But here's the clever part. The blackout wasn't just about creating chaos and darkness. It was a strategic move. See, when the main grid goes down, all the air defense systems, including those S-300s, have to switch over to backup generators. And that switchover, it's not instant. It creates this tiny blind spot, a window of 2 to 5 minutes where they can't see a thing, just long enough for 150 aircraft to slip across the coast.
Okay, so the planes are in, but what happens when the radars reboot? Now, you might be thinking of old-school jamming, just blasting the radar with noise so it can't see. Nope, this was way more elegant. They used a technique often called suitor. Instead of just blinding the radar, they actually hacked into the radar's network. The operators essentially became the system administrators for the enemy's gear. So the radar guys on the ground, they didn't see a screen full of static. They saw clear blue skies. How can you shoot at something your own multi-million-dollar system swears isn't there? You can't.
All right, so the aircraft are in, the radars are lying, but surely someone would notice, right? A commander would give an order. Well, that's where the third prong comes in. You can't give an order if the lines are dead.
They launched a massive denial-of-service attack on military communication channels while physically severing key fiber optic lines. The result was pure chaos. Imagine you're that local S-300 commander. You might see a faint blip on a secondary scope, you pick up the phone to get permission to fire, and nothing. Just dead air. No phones, no data. And in a rigid, top-down system like that one, you do not act without orders. So they basically weaponized the bureaucracy itself.
But that leaves one huge question, right? The target wasn't just sitting in one spot, waiting. To pull off an extraction this precise, you need perfect, real-time intelligence. So, where did it come from?
And this is my favorite part. It is so brilliantly ironic. The attackers turned the regime's own tools of control against it. Venezuela's huge network of Chinese-made smart city surveillance cameras, yeah, that was now a live, high-def intelligence feed for the assault force. They were literally watching their target's every move on the government's own security cameras.
Now, an operation this complex doesn't just happen overnight. It sounds like something that unfolded in a few hours. But the truth is, those 30 minutes of action on the ground were built on a foundation of nearly 10 years of silent, meticulous work.
You have to appreciate the long game here. For years, almost a decade, Every time Venezuela bought new tech, routers, servers, military electronics, there's a good chance it was being intercepted somewhere in the supply chain. Tiny, undetectable backdoors were installed, the box was perfectly resealed and shipped on its way. Then you have sleeper malware, digital time bombs planted in critical systems like the power grid, just sitting there, dormant, for years, waiting for a single, silent command to wake.
And you might be thinking, well, what about air-gapped systems, the ones totally disconnected from the internet? That's where people come in. Because as the old saying goes, humans are always the weakest link. All it takes is one compromised contractor with one infected USB drive to bridge that so-called air gap and let the malware. Okay, so let's zoom out. What does all of this mean? What's the big picture here? Because this isn't just a wild story about a single event. It's a sign that the fundamental rules of conflict are being rewritten right before our eyes.
A lot of you have probably heard of Stuxnet, right? The famous virus that targeted a single Iranian nuclear facility? Well, think of this operation as Stuxnet on steroids. We've gone from targeting one building to disabling the entire defense network of a whole country. The scale is just breathtaking.
And really, if you take away one thing from this, it should be this right here. The helicopters, the soldiers, the part we could see, that was maybe 10% of the operation. Just the tiny tip of the iceberg. The real operation, the overwhelming 90% of the effort hidden below the surface, was the invisible cyber campaign that made it all possible.
Let me be super clear about this. The missiles were there. The launchers were armed. The radars were powered on. But they were all effectively in a coma, rendered totally useless by lines of code. The commandos didn't face a fight because the battlefield had already been conquered, digitally.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. As we look at the future of conflict, we have to ask ourselves, in this age of fifth domain warfare, what does the first shot of a war even look like anymore? Is it the roar of a jet engine, or is it just the silent click of a keyboard?